Uh, Good afternoon. Before we get into the COVID update, I want to briefly update folks on the fires raging in Colorado. Mullen Fire, which is in Wyoming, south central Wyoming, but the air really is affecting northern Colorado, is at 77,950 acres, only 2% contained. Just south of there, we have the Cameron Peak Fire, now at 124,026 acres, the third largest fire in our state history. So we had the largest fire in our state history, the Pine Gulch Fire this year, now controlled, reached 100% control, 5 days ago. Cameron Peak Fire is only 21% contained, third largest fire in state history. Also many evacuations and several dozen buildings missing. Including the Shambhala Spiritual Center, which I think the main building survived, but some of the other buildings have been damaged. Also affecting the air quality, of course. Middle Fork Fire is 7,800 acres, 0% contained. Williams Fork, 1,200 acres, 14% contained. And then Grizzly Peak is unchanged, 32,000 acres, 91% contained. We are seeing significant air quality impact from these 5 wildfires, but also from the out-of-state wildfires, particularly California. Just the amount of acreage there really compounding the impact of our state fires and, of course, the Wyoming fire. It was a little better over the weekend. There was a cold front that moved through Colorado. It cut off some of the wildfire smoke contribution from California. But the Mullen Fire in south central Wyoming is having a major impact on air quality. And we're expecting, while air quality ticked up over the weekend, it's going to tick back down with the drier air and the wind patterns of the next few days and the increased wildfire activity. This has been a very active wildfire season across the western United States. 7.4 million acres is about how much have burned this year in the U.S., most of that in the West, and 3.8 million of that, about half, are currently active fires. So CDPHE has issued 107 air quality health advisories. And there's a number of things we need to do to protect our health and well-being during these smoke advisories with a very poor air quality. Generally speaking, if you're very young, if you have babies, the very old, and also those with asthma or cardiac or respiratory illness, would be well advised to avoid prolonged periods of time outside, certainly avoid exertion outside. In these situations, try to stay indoors and limit your outdoor exercise in particular. Residents should limit exertions if you're asthmatic or older or younger. And if your home has a window air conditioning unit, use the indoor air circulation setting to avoid bringing more polluted air into your home. The Air Pollution Control Division has a lot of good information available at colorado.gov/air quality. Please check it out. It's also important to know that the symptoms of poor air quality often are similar to COVID-like symptoms, where you might develop a cough or respiratory difficulties. So if you are developing those symptoms, get tested. Go to one of the free, quick, and easy testing centers, covid19.colorado.gov, or contact your community health clinic or doctor because there's going to be an increase in the general symptoms associated with COVID because of the fire. So you want to know which it is. If it is a respiratory issue from the poor air quality, you should continue to stay indoors, not exert yourself, and it could be with you for a while here as the air quality is poor over the week. And of course, likewise, you need to know if that is COVID. But the symptoms can manifest similarly: coughs, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, poor air quality, also some of the early symptoms of COVID as well. We are at 70,025 cases, 535 new positive cases. We continue, the hospitalizations continue to go up over the last week. The growth in the case count has leveled off. We always see hospitalizations as lagging growth in case count. We are doing better on testing, which gives me a little more confidence that we're going to have a lower positivity rate and we're catching a higher percentage of those who have COVID. So I just want to emphasize the importance of testing in this. the more that we can successfully identify and make sure that people who are contagious are isolated, the better. And that's important, again, if you're experiencing symptoms that might be from the fire or might be from COVID, you need to know whether it's safe for you to go out or whether you're contagious and might be a danger to loved ones or people you associate with. So if you do have shortness of breath, coughs, you get tested. If it's negative, it's likely because of the wildfire air quality. If it's positive, you need to quarantine yourself to prevent infecting others. The bulk of what I want to talk about today is really how important for our kids, for our parents, for our economy it is that kids are enrolled and engaged in school every day. And I know that COVID has been a real challenge to that, a challenge for parents, challenge for kids, challenge for educators, for school districts. It's really a challenge for everybody to adapt. And when the state transitioned to online learning last year, it really took everybody by surprise. And our districts and educators took on the Herculean task of standing up remote learning programs with really just for the final few month or so, 2 months of the year. Did a great job finishing the year out. And they were focused on meeting the basic needs of students. Now, this year, families are in different places. Some families are, their kids are back in school and they're fine. Other families don't want their kids physically back in school, so they've enrolled in district online programs. And other families are, and this is who we want to specifically message to, are trying to figure out what to do. And if that's the case, it's really would be beneficial to enroll your kid in the school and at least begin the online program, even if it's not ideal, if you're not ready to send your kid back in person. And you know why? At some point, we hope vaccine or it's even lower levels of infection or it's next semester, you may be ready for your kid to re-enter the classroom, and your kid will be behind and have difficulty re-entering the classroom if they weren't part of the online education for the first semester. So I know a lot of parents they're not ready for their kids to go back, but they also don't love the online program. The importance of enrolling, if you're not ready to send your kid back, at least in the online program, it is very important because your kid will likely go back to school at some point in their future, and you don't want them to have a major deficit when they do. And our schools and school districts are already working very hard to catch students up, and that's impossible to do if students aren't enrolled and attending a form of school, whether it's online or in person. We know parents are often juggling a job or two, childcare responsibilities. As a parent myself, I know how difficult that is. But we know that the potential learning loss for our highest needs kids, English language learners, students with disabilities, low-income students, can have implications for years to come. In fact, McKinsey estimated that many K-12 students in the U.S. could lose $60,000 to $80,000 of lifetime earnings as a result of COVID-related learning gaps if they're not enrolled in school or miss a year or miss half a year. Other research shows that learning loss is greatest in the earlier grades, and particularly preschool through third grade. So remember, enroll your kids. If you're not ready to send them back physically, enroll them in the online program. If for some reason you don't like the particular online program that your school has, there are many public online programs in our state. We have open enrollment. You can enroll them in any public school online program you want for free, and make sure that they at least are keeping up until they're ready to safely go back. We know that when students are not enrolled in attending school, they also lose the social benefits of interaction with other students, even remote interaction, and they lack social support, like connections with students and staff. We've always had families in Colorado that successfully homeschool, but that is a very hard and deliberate thing to do. So don't just think you're homeschooling because you're giving your kid a book all day and leaving them at home. It is the families that are committed to homeschooling do so in a very rigorous and thoughtful way, often with a national curriculum as their guide. It's not something to be taken lightly. So unless you're truly ready for that success in homeschooling your kid, please enroll them in the online program of your school district, of a district school district, of a charter school, wherever you want, if you're not ready to send them back in person or they aren't ready to go back in person. It's also important that kids need that connection to a school because that means that they also are connected with the school support personnel, mental health professionals, counselors, that also plays a role in providing them with that normalcy that they need and addressing any trauma that they face as a result of the pandemic. So while we don't have the full picture, we know that some parents are still deciding to sit out the school year for a number of reasons. I really want all those parents who are watching this to take another look at enrolling their kid in school. It doesn't mean your kid has to go to school in person. They can do online. If you don't like the particular online program, look for another. There are many. But your kid will return to school someday, right, post-pandemic, and you don't want them to be a year or more behind and to fall out of having those meaningful social connections, even online, which is not as good as in person. Make sure that they have those connections during this difficult time. And we're going to talk today about some of the psychological impact that kids and families are feeling. We do know, while we don't have the full picture, that enrollment is down, especially in the younger grades. And as somebody who chaired the State Board of Education and ran a charter school network and has a parent of an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, that concerns me greatly. Even if in-person attendance isn't for you, be part of a school online program. Your local neighborhood school, first and foremost, to maintain those connections, but if you don't like that, look for others. We also see that attendance and engagement is often too low in the upper grades. So if your kid is enrolled, make sure that they're doing their work, do your best to monitor them if they're not ready to go back in person. Most of our schools, as you know, are back in person, but there are parents who don't want their kids to be there yet. And many are enrolled in line, but not all. And so we really worry about those lost kids that aren't going to school in person and whose parents didn't enroll them in an online school. Please take that step for your kids to make sure that they have that opportunity to stay caught up with where their classmates are at so that they're ready to re-enter the schools when you feel it's safe. And so today I want to make sure everybody knows about this challenge. Everyone, from parents to educators to religious leaders to community members to the business community, has an important role in this challenge. And really, the ask of parents is make a plan. Make a plan to make sure your child is enrolled, attending either in person or virtually, and engaged in school. There are so many options in Colorado. It's an open enrollment state. Find a school, an option that works for your family. Where there are barriers in the way, reach out to your school district, your community, to remove those barriers. Educators, I know many school districts are working hard to conduct outreach to our highest need families, and that often means reassigning staff to make calls to parents and using community leaders to help track down a student that they haven't been able to find. It's hard work, but the students that are the hardest to reach and enroll are really the students that we need to reach and need to be enrolled and will benefit from being enrolled the most. For community members, we all need to be partners in this effort. I'm proud that community centers across the state have opened spaces for pods and for students to do remote learning for families who aren't ready to send their kids back to the schools. Those kids are enrolled in the school. They're just not ready to go back to the physical school. And just as we've known all along, addressing this crisis takes ingenuity and creativity. So reach out to help families. Really ask one another, what is your plan to help your child get back to school? I know so many community organizations are stepping up and providing meals or transportation if needed where you can. And for business leaders, I want business leaders to think about what role they can play in this, in preventing the pandemic from costing the future of children. Look through your storage closets, donate extra laptops to PCs for Pupil or other nonprofits or your schools. Consider what kind of support you can provide to employees who are parents, volunteer, donate. And I'm inviting you to share on Facebook or Twitter what you're doing as an educator, as a parent, as a neighbor, as a community member, to make sure that the students in your world are enrolled in school and engage in whatever form that is and engaged in learning. So tag that with hashtag #EveryKidEveryDay, and let's talk about what we're doing to make sure that kids are enrolled in a meaningful educational program during this pandemic so they don't lose out on a month or a year of their education. Of course, the state also needs to play a critical role in addressing the threat of learning loss. And while we know that remote learning is a reality for some, we also want to make sure that every school district has the tools it needs to be in person and safe for kids. And today we announced some revisions that we worked with the school districts on for outbreak guidance that give more tools to school districts to adopt best practices for COVID mitigation like seating charts and mask wearing, to safely quarantine close contacts in some situations instead of entire cohorts. And that's very important, especially for middle and high school, where it's often more difficult to keep students in their cohorts, although districts are doing a very good job doing that and therefore preventing larger closures. We hope that these revisions will help provide additional flexibility for school districts about how and when to cohort students and provide for more in-learning opportunities when it's safely possible. In addition, we're announcing today that we've placed 40 new AmeriCorps members in some of our highest need schools in Colorado, from the San Luis Valley to the Front Range, that are focused on student outreach and engagement, trying to find lost kids and make sure that they're meaningfully enrolled in an educational program, either in person or online. We've also announced $2 million from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs through the Next Step program to support education housing partnerships to provide stable housing for families that are at risk of homelessness. And that's supporting Adams 14, Sheridan, Brighton 27J, Jeffco, Boulder Valley School District, and their partners, helping over 200 homeless families have stable housing. We know that schools can't do everything right now. They can't do it all, but they're doing their best. These kinds of partnerships and resources really help school districts have more housing stability among their parents. These 3 steps also complement other steps we're taking through the Attorney General and Department of Education: 34,000 hotspots to families, $2 million to address broadband connectivity issues, our effort to expand Colorado Empower Learning, our state's digital learning platform, and our work to provide more flexibility for parents engaged in learning pods across our state, both formally through school districts and informally on their own. So I also wanted to highlight the state of Colorado has put together some resources for families who are navigating their children's learning. You can go to stayathomeco.colorado.gov/education. And the Colorado Department of Education has a family resources page. Go to cde.state.co.us and click on families. Parents and their children can watch Colorado Classroom, high quality K-3 literacy and STEM content taught by master teachers. My first grader enjoys it every Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. on Rocky Mountain PBS. And very, very importantly, parents worried about your child's mental or behavioral health should immediately contact Colorado Crisis Services at 844-493-8255, or you can text the word TALK to 38255. Today we're going to hear from Commissioner Katy Anthes about the importance of enrolling in and attending school, Aurora Public Schools Superintendent Rico Munn about what his district is doing to help conduct outreach to the highest need students, provide them with support, and Dr. Chris Rogers about his work as a child psychiatrist and the importance of school, learning, and that sense of normalcy right now for the many families who are still figuring out what to do, who haven't yet enrolled their kid in school. I'm looking forward to working with Colorado families to address this challenge. It's critical for our kids, for our schools, for our community, for our economy, and of course for our students. With that, I would like to turn it over to the Education Commissioner for Colorado, Commissioner Anthes.
Thank you, Governor Polis. This is such an important issue, so I'm really glad we're highlighting it today. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to ensuring all Colorado students receive a quality education, even in this situation with COVID. So I want to start by thanking our districts, our schools, our teachers, our education professionals, and our staff for their hard work and ingenuity across the state and supporting all of our students this year. Our educators have been dedicated, determined in the face of relentless challenges. And so we stand by them. We know they're working so hard and we appreciate them. I'm incredibly grateful for their enduring commitment and their flexibility and their innovation as they adapt their professional practices to support ourselves and our students during these strange times. Our teachers have not only worked on how to engage students in a remote environment, but they've also had to multitask by simultaneously developing lesson plans that accommodate all of the COVID safety procedures and protocols, while also sometimes teaching some students in person and some students online. They are working very hard to create quality learning experiences. I'm grateful for all of the teachers who are exploring all different ways to connect with students, working hard to reach out to the students they haven't heard from, and creating a sense of belonging, because that is so important during this time of isolation. Even if you're doing it remotely, we can create senses of belonging for our students. For example, one teacher created individualized videos for each one of their students, welcoming them to their class, encouraging them, and letting them know what they can expect in her challenging coursework. Another teacher made a special effort to sense signs of stress in her students and reach out to them and find different ways to support them with all of their needs. Our teachers are true heroes during this crisis, but they cannot do it alone. We need everyone to step in and support families and parents at this time. As the governor mentioned, families are dealing with a variety of different challenges right now, multiple jobs, some may even be reeling from a job loss, or maybe they're taking care of older family members who need more help. And so I get it. It might be really hard to enroll your students in school or help them in their remote learning. But students who aren't in school or who aren't engaged in remote learning at all aren't just missing out on instruction. They're missing out on opportunities to benefit from connections and from other caring adults that can support them with a multitude of needs. They're missing out on all the resources that schools can offer them, including school meals and health services. And our special needs students, our English language learners, and our students experiencing homelessness, really need those extra supports that schools can help them succeed. So I join the governor in urging parents to enroll their kids in schools and to encourage their students to engage in school if you're already enrolled. So attend school every day. Make sure your students are checking in with their school teachers and school professionals, even if they're doing so remotely. Those connections are so important to learning and academic achievement. Please think about what you can do to help your students and your parents. If you are an employer, please consider ways that you can encourage flexibilities for your parents who are working from home and supporting students in their remote learning. And if you're a community member or a community organization and you're connecting with families, please ask them if they're enrolled in school. Please help connect them to their local school district or their local school. We cannot let our children's education become a casualty of this pandemic. Let's join together in supporting our parents, our families, and our educators, and making sure every student is connected to learning and supports. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And I'm now turning it over to Aurora Public Schools Superintendent Rico Munn.
Governor, Commissioner, thank you very much for inviting me here today, and thank you for elevating this conversation that's so incredibly important. I'm incredibly proud that we as a state have framed this response to the pandemic as one of how do we respond to and protect our most vulnerable. And I think that's an incredibly important part of this conversation today because I think our responsibility is how do we make this pandemic an event that is life impacting for our kids but not life changing. And the way that we can try to make sure it's not life changing is prevent as much continuity as possible through their educational environment. I serve as the Superintendent of the Aurora Public Schools. We're the 5th largest district in the state. And what we are seeing across the country and across the state is a sharp decline in enrollment, particularly of our youngest learners. And across the metro area even, that means thousands of our youngest kids, our preschoolers and our kindergartners, are not enrolled in school. We need to turn that around. We need to change that because that's an incredibly life-changing impact for our youngest kids. What we know is that by being in schools, there are 2 key things that happens. One, we can connect kids to the academic and needs that they have. We know that over the course of this pandemic, we've seen significant learning loss in our younger ages. We need to turn that around. Across the country, we're seeing, as the governor mentioned, learning loss anywhere from 3 months to 2 years of impact, particularly on our most impacted and vulnerable kids. Given their developmental needs at this stage with cognition, language understanding, fine motor support, we want to make sure that we have the supports in place. And what I want to tell you is that public school educators are here with the resources to support you and your family. In order for that to happen, we need you to enroll your kids, be it online or in person. As for our district, we started planning for this school year right about April 9th of last year. As soon as we understood that this pandemic was here and that we had to deal with its impacts, we started preparing for what that experience would be for your children for this school year. We invested in new technology and new training to support you and your children through this crisis, and we are here and prepared to help. What's also incredibly important is the social supports that school provides, be it online or be it in person. Kids are social creatures. We know that we need to have them connected with other adults and teachers and other students for their continued growth and mental health and well-being, as I'm sure the doctor will speak to. As one example, in our district, thanks to a 2018 mill levy, we have a licensed mental health professional in every one of our schools. And we are connecting with our students both in person and online, setting up mental health hotlines, setting up ways to support our kids through their life challenges, be it with the academic needs or be it with real crisis moments in their lives. We're responding to the needs of those kids. But we can't do that for your child unless you're enrolled, unless you show up in our system in some way where we can connect you. We also know around some of the other needs that families have, particularly around food during this crisis. We've served over 2 million meals to families throughout this time through various school lunch programs and meal programs. Again, we need to connect with families. We need to know who they are and where they are in order to be able to provide those resources. It's incredibly important that through enrollment you establish that connection with your local community and the resources that we have to offer to support you and your families. Finally, I want to point out just the sheer moment in time that this is for all of our kids. Yesterday at the Aurora Public Schools, we started welcoming back our kindergartners and our preschoolers. And I had the opportunity to go to one of our child development centers and see some of our preschoolers. And I can tell you, even through the masks, we could see and feel the sheer joy that they had at reconnecting with classmates, reconnecting with teachers, and having the opportunity to seize upon this moment to further their education. Again, I want to thank you, Governor, thank you, Commissioner, for highlighting this issue. And again, we're here to serve, we're here to support, but we need you to come and connect and enroll with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Munn. We also have Dr. Chris Rogers with us. He's a child and adolescent psychiatrist and also president of the Colorado Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Association. I know, Dr. Rogers, this has been a very difficult time for young people. I know you really feel strongly about the importance of having that relationship with the school, whether it's online or in person, and also what parents and community can do to support the mental health needs of our kids. Dr. Rogers?
Thank you so much, Governor Polis, for inviting me to come speak today, and you're correct. I do feel very passionately about this issue. I'm going to echo what the previous speakers have said, is that school is critical to the healthy development of kids and adolescents. School provides kids with structure, which now more than ever is desperately needed. A predictable schedule with clear expectations supports kids in many ways, from providing a sense of safety and comfort to younger kids to providing an anchor in the emotionally charged time of adolescence. There's real benefit to having this structured routine. The research is clear that kids do best when they know what to expect from day-to-day life. And one of the things that we can do to promote a sense of normalcy for our children during this pandemic is to provide this clear schedule, particularly when learning remotely. School provides community, which is so vital to the social and emotional development of young people. Every bit as important as the content taught in schools are the lessons about how kids form friendships, deal with conflict, and gain support from their peers. While we are all adapting to the need for a largely virtual world, being a part of a school, part of a class, provides a sense of identity for kids and belonging that is integral to this development. One of the biggest stressors we hear again and again from the kids in our hospital is a total sense of isolation. And without being involved in school, kids are left to feel further alone when this connection to their community can literally save them. School also provides vital services for our kids, especially for our disadvantaged and underserved kids. The services provided by schools can be a literal lifeline in a time of stress. In particular, mental health services in the schools are crucial to identifying issues and initiating treatment early when the outcomes are most favorable. Young people may be more likely to reach out to peers, trusted teachers, or counselors in their school community when they're struggling, so maintaining access to these supports is crucial to combat the epidemic of teen suicide that we saw even before this pandemic. School-age years are the most critical for social, physical, and intellectual development, and the impact of losing any of these years, as highlighted by Governor Polis, can be devastating. School provides learning and challenges, which we know is good for kids. Children thrive from being challenged appropriately and leading to better intellectual development and long-term mental wellness. Continuing to learn is vital during this pandemic, but I do want to speak to parents and kids about adjustments to expectations during this unprecedented time of stress. Every day I see young people struggling to keep up, sometimes even in classes they previously found manageable. While there continues to be a steep learning curve for many to adapt to online learning, an even bigger obstacle is the stress and trauma of dealing with all the losses presented by this pandemic. We know the impact of trauma on the developing brain can directly impact focus, concentration, and energy, all of which can make learning seem overwhelming at times. And similarly, we hear story after story from parents who are doing their best to deal with all the changes and challenges of trying to be parent, breadwinner, counselor, and teacher. While I don't pretend to know all the reasons why some families are not prioritizing school enrollment and attendance this year, I suspect many have felt that giving up is the easiest option when faced with so many expectations. To all the kids and parents in Colorado, I want to emphasize that sometimes being okay is okay. The impacts of trauma and stress are real and everywhere these days, and it may not be the year to push ourselves like we have in the past. Parents may need to shift expectations for themselves and their kids so that everyone in the family feels good about themselves and that learning maintains its enjoyability. Things will get better, but until they do, making sure that kids are attending school and benefiting from the community, structure, and connection is our #1 priority. Beyond that, doing okay is a great goal for us all. And if anyone listening isn't doing okay, please know that help is out there. Reach out. People are wanting to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. That was really well put. We all want to do okay and get through this. And for most families, they are okay with their kids attending school in person, and they know that the schools are taking extraordinary precautions to avoid the spread of the virus, including cohorting. For those who aren't, this is not something that should be politicized. It should be personalized, because there are many grandparents raising their kids, perhaps a parent with a pre-existing condition, or just a kid for whom online education works well, and they're doing online. Both of those are fine. What we're worried about are kids that aren't doing either. And except for the parents that are truly able to take on the rigors of homeschooling, including the social aspect of it, it really is best for those kids to enroll either online or in person to avoid missing out and falling behind. And that's our message today. I also want to remind everybody that October 5th is a deadline to fill out census forms. Go to census.gov. It's so much more than a population count. It allocates billions of dollars to our state over 10 years. It's about the political voice of our state and representative government. It's about getting your community where you live, access to resources, which are often divided formulaically based on the census. My family did it early on. It only takes a few minutes. Please take a few minutes, fill out the form, go to census.gov for more information. We want Colorado to get the best bang for our buck out of the federal government, and we want your community to get ahead. Before opening it up for questions, I want to uplift a great example of a partner who's helping Coloradans during this time of need. A corporate partner, LiveWell Enlightened Health, is a vertically integrated cannabis company headquartered in Colorado. They recently turned the national coin shortage, which has been a challenge for cash-only businesses, into a donation to our COVID relief fund, which you can also donate to at helpcoloradonow.org. Starting in August, LiveWell provided the opportunity for its customers to round up their purchase totals to the nearest dollar amount, with the difference going to the state's COVID relief fund, which has deployed over $20 million across the state to those most in need. As of today, LiveWell Enlightened Health customers choosing to round up COVID relief has raised $29,319, over 68,000 transactions, and I understand that many other companies in the cannabis industry are following suit, inviting their customers to round up for COVID relief, and I encourage other retail businesses to do the same. I have no doubt that the marijuana industry and the generosity of its customers will make a significant contribution to assist our fellow Coloradans, just as they do with the taxes that they pay into the cash funds. We are very grateful for all those who have helped helpcoloradonow.org, corporations, individuals, nonprofits. Thanks to your generosity, we've distributed over $20 million to community organizations across the state. I visited a dozen or so. Thanks to Mile High United Way, there is zero overhead associated with this effort. They're covering all the administrative costs, so every dollar donated is $1 out the door. And I want to thank all of the donors at helpcoloradonow.org. Thank you for being here today, Commissioner Anthes, Superintendent Munn, Dr. Rogers. Thanks for providing your perspectives on a very important issue that we've got to get right. We cannot let our children's future be a victim of this global pandemic. With that, we'll open up to questions.
Governor, can you say exactly what the enrollment declines are looking like, percentage point, and or how many kids? I think you said thousands, Mr. Munn.
Well,
and also I wanted to ask too how this affects the October count, and if you guys are going to push that back and make any changes to help school districts that might be seeing an under enrollment.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the reason why we're talking about this now is the last chance for parents to enroll their kids and for the district to be able to receive the resources they need to educate those kids. There is no informal count to the state, Jesse, so it's anecdotal. You can certainly talk to different superintendents and ask, but there is no information that the state has yet on that other than informal. But we do worry about the kids that are not enrolled in in-person school or online. There are certainly more than usual. And while some of those parents might be able to administer successful homeschooling programs, we worry that many of them are taking this too lightly and are really hurting their kids' future by not at least enrolling them in an online program if they're not ready to return to school. Commissioner Anthes, do you have anything to add on that?
I don't think so, Governor. I think we're just, as you said, seeing anecdotal data, and so we just really want to encourage all of our parents to enroll and attend and engage in school.
Good afternoon, Dave with Denver 7. For the first time in decades, CDPHE has shut down a mental health facility because of patient mistreatment. Clearview Behavioral Health is that facility. Our investigation shows it took more than 2 years of complaints for the state to take this action. So what message should this send to other medical facilities that don't take patient care seriously?
Well, we need to put patient care first, especially for those in need. I hope that for all the providers, this is a wake-up call about the seriousness of their responsibility to meet the needs of their patients. I hope that this helps inspire the confidence of Colorado families in the facilities that serve those at most risk.
This is for Commissioner. It's kind of a follow-up to Jesse Paul's question. Are there any changes to the pupil count on October 1st in terms of remote learning? You know, typically it's just enrollment numbers, but as we're hearing, there's less engagement, and how are teachers supposed to be, I guess, tallying their numbers if maybe someone's enrolled but hasn't showed up to class all year?
Thank you. Yes. We have made some adjustments to how districts can tabulate attendance, which is one way that they get their dollars for their enrollment for the school year. We've made adjustments because of the remote learning and that attendance may look different. It may not only just be in-person head count. So we have made some decisions there. Many of those decisions are local school board decisions that they talk about what is the current schedule that they have and what does attendance look like. But we are seeing, especially in remote learning, that continuing to check in and stay engaged can be harder. So that's why we're really trying to say, make sure your students, if you're a parent at home, make sure your students are checking in regularly with their teacher and their school district, and really focusing in on that. And Superintendent Munn may have some additions there.
As the commissioner was speaking to, one of the flexibilities that the state worked on over the summer was changing some of the attendance rules and how we could do that. And so I know my Board of Education, and I suspect many other boards across the state, adopted new attendance policies this summer. I think we did around the end of July as we prepared for the new school year. And so that includes different ways of how we might mark attendance, everything from students completing certain performance tasks to students having certain percentage of time being engaged on programs, and we have different, as you might imagine, platforms which can identify engagement in different ways. We tried to respond to how we were doing education and therefore how we could track student attendance and engagement, and all districts across the state have tried to respond in that way.
And let me just bring it back to the kids. As somebody who's been deeply involved in education for decades, I am very concerned for the kids who are not in school physically and also have not enrolled in an online program. I know how hard a proper, rigorous homeschooling program is that includes socialization. There are always been some parents in Colorado who successfully do that. But I think for many families, the best option for the future of their kids is to enroll them in either online or in-person public education.
Hi, Governor. This is Joe Vaccarelli from Denver 7. I actually have two really quick questions, if that's okay. My first is, we had our first Broncos games with fans last week. What kind of things will you be looking at for the team to keep their variants or maybe expand to allow more fans at future games? And my second question has to do with Halloween, and will the state take a position on Halloween celebrations this year and trick-or-treating, or leave that up to individual communities?
I hope the Broncos start playing better. I know we all do here in Orange Nation, and we look forward to, of course, separately continuing to work with them on the safety protocols to allow more fans in, and we just hope that those fans have a lot more to cheer on in coming games. I would mention, by the way, as you know, there were only a handful of, and now there's some NFL teams under quarantine. There might be some alterations to the schedules. We were one of the few, or the earliest, that is allowing fans into games. I think it was a good experience from everything we've, except for the game itself. It was a good experience from a health perspective. What was your second question? So I think, Dr. Hurley, he was here last week, and I think that we are going to take a look at whether there, and the demand for state level guidance around safe Halloween experiences. Certainly kids can dress up and have fun. I think the question is, how do we have something that's as fun as the traditional trick-or-treating, which involve face-to-face interactions, but it could be done in a different way that's safer for kids. And we'll look forward to working on what that might look like for a successful, safe, and fun Halloween.
Hello, Governor. This is Vinny Dalchuda at the Bloomberg News in Denver. I have a three-part question on COVID-19 and guidance from the White House. But who in the White House is providing medical advice to state governors? Are you confident in it? And do you think the president is getting the same advice? Thank you very much.
Yes, we do get regular advice from our nation's health experts, and we do find that very constructive and helpful from the COVID response team, from the CDC. We don't know if the president receives that same information or the president is aware of the information that reaches us. But I have been pleased with the additional analysis that complements, often very much in sync with our state level analysis that we get from the COVID response group and the CDC on a regular basis.
Governor and Director Anthes, the count period starts on Thursday. Isn't this a little bit late to be sending this warning out to parents? And should they know that they need to have their students enrolled by Thursday? Isn't that part of this message?
Thank you. Yes. Well, we think it's important. Get enrolled by Thursday if possible. We needed to see some of the trends that were happening, and as we've gotten some of the anecdotal information, we thought it was important that we send this message. This message is important just beyond count day. The message is about students enrolling in school and students being supported in school, whether it's before count day or after count day. We continue to work with districts to see how we can support students. So if there is a large uptick in enrollment after this, we will continue to work with our districts and our policymakers to determine any paths necessary to support all of our students.
If I can, Governor, I think this is not the start of a conversation. This is an exclamation point on the conversation we've been having with families and communities. I know in our community we've been going out knocking on doors, trying to make sure that we connect with families to make sure they're okay, and then make sure we can connect them back to school and to resources. But as Commissioner Anthes was saying, this isn't just about count day. It's about kids need to be in school, and they need to be in school whether it's online or in person.
Yes, and Superintendent Munn is not alone in those efforts. Most superintendents have really engaged their community, gotten out, talked to people. This is really the state, the governor, putting an exclamation point on that. And as both the commissioner and the superintendent indicated, this is a message that doesn't expire on Thursday. I mean, if families are not enrolled this week, we want them enrolled next week, next month, as soon as they can for the benefit of their kids.
Hi, this is Erica Meltzer from Talkbeat. Superintendent Munn somewhat addressed this, but I'm wondering what sort of concrete steps the state is taking beyond this press conference to reach parents and find out who these students are that are not enrolled. And then I'm also wondering if we end up with much lower enrollment on count day, how will you be treating funding for school districts going forward?
Well, the CDE has the legal responsibility to administer the School Finance Act as written, and they will do a great job doing that, obviously using the maximum flexibility they have under that law to help where they can. The superintendents in the field have been working, and I've had several calls with them, very hard on getting students back. We've, through the safe school guidelines that we've issued, through providing the masks to teachers, tried to be as constructive as we can in getting schools back to in-person learning. The vast majority are already there. Some are still in that transition. We also have been highlighting the importance of online education through their public school for those who are not ready to go back in person. And without casting any judgment on that, it's not to be politicized, it's to be personalized, right? It could be grandparents raising a kid, it could be parents with pre-existing condition, it could be that the kid has a pre-existing condition. All of those can be valid reasons, but what is important is that that kid's education is just as important as children that are going back. And if you're not ready to go back and your kids aren't ready to go back, please enroll them in an online program. If you don't like your local school's online program, you can look at any other online education program in the state. There are hundreds of them. Every district has one, and they're all open to you and available to you. But please make sure your kid is getting a good education.
If I can, Governor, I would say, Erica, two concrete things I would point to. One is the relatively quick and hassle-free allocation of CARES dollars enabled us to get our technology in place, the technology to sign kids up, to get technology in their hands, to do the remote learning if where necessary. And the other has been the state support and also the support of the nonprofit community around COVID Check Colorado, allowing us to provide in-person environments where we have a level of confidence around the safety and health of our staff as well.
Yeah, hi, Governor. Thank you for your time. This is Allie Levine from 9 News. Question about Boulder. Some indicators are starting to trend down just from the latest data reported yesterday, particularly, of course, to what we saw a week ago. What do you attribute this to, and what message is still critical to impart on students and residents in Boulder?
Well, I think the warning lights were on. The university, the city are taking extraordinary steps to control the spread. My greatest concern remains whether it spreads to those who are more vulnerable in the community, including both in the university community, meaning maintenance staff, faculty, and others, and also people in the town. So thankfully, while there's been a small uptick, we've not yet seen large-scale community spread, and I'm hopeful that they'll be able to provide more normalcy for the students over time to make sure that they can continue with an education at our state's flagship university.
Hello, Governor. I'm Jesus Carrasquel from Noticias Univisión. Gobernador, aún siguen en aumento los casos de coronavirus en el estado. Ahora que se acerca Halloween, Thanksgiving y el invierno, ¿qué medidas específicas se está tomando para controlar que se siga propagando el virus?
Estamos monitoreando esto cercanamente y estamos trabajando con los gobiernos locales para que ellos tomen las medidas necesarias para contener la propagación del virus a su región en nuestro estado, de su ciudad y no a otras partes del estado. También es importante que todos pongan de su parte, usan sus tapabocas, se lavan las manos, mantenga distancia y es mejor conversar con otros afuera. Es importante tener precauciones en este momento de tiempo.
Hi, this is Erin Prater with the Gazette in Colorado Springs and the Gazette in Denver. 2 questions. The first is, do you feel this third wave of coronavirus in the state has peaked? And the second is, what would you say to those special needs parents, many of whom, at least that we hear from sometimes, have been turned down by schools other than their home schools with those schools citing cost and inability to provide services, or who are told their medically fragile children on the IEPs must come in to receive them?
So ask me in a week whether we have reached the peak for this third wave or not. The frustrating thing about this virus is the lag period. We always wish we had next week's information this week, tomorrow's information today. I know we don't, so there simply is not an answer to that yet. But ask me in a week. I hope that we're able to say we're now on a downward trend from the third peak, but we are not able to say that yet, and we are still worried that this could be an increase. I'll turn this over to the commissioner, but obviously briefly, school districts do have the responsibility to meet the needs of their special needs students, a pandemic or no pandemic. I know it's an extraordinary challenge for our districts to do that. I've seen a lot of great out of the box thinking about the best way to do that. Even during the stay-at-home phase, many school districts had special ed, small groups, one-on-one at their schools to make sure the learning needs of kids were met. And I'll turn it over to the commissioner to update you on what districts are doing to meet their legal responsibilities under IDEA.
Yes, thank you, Governor. I think you said it well, that our districts do still have a responsibility and our schools do still have a responsibility to support our special needs students. There's also no question that it's a challenge, that we want to be careful of their medical needs. We want to be thoughtful about what parents' needs and how those students best learn. And in these challenging times, that can be difficult. And so our districts are trying to pivot, adapt, learn, and figure out new and innovative ways to support our special ed students. So I know that many of them are bringing them together in smaller group learning opportunities. And so, again, we continue to try, and our districts are continuing to work very hard to do that. And we absolutely need to continue that work and continue getting better at it.
I'm wondering how the state is determining how many kids might be experiencing homelessness or housing instability during this time, if that's being tracked as we're tracking enrollment numbers and kind of what that tracking looks like on the state level. I know a lot of districts are doing it themselves, but how are we tracking it on a statewide level?
Yeah, school districts do this under McKinney-Bento. Does either Mr. Munn or who wants to talk about the process that school districts go through on the kind of homelessness?
Superintendent.
Yeah.
Well, I think the question was what is the state doing? So we have our usual process at the district, I think.
Right. Yeah, through our McKinney-Vento process, we do work with our districts to identify those students and then provide supports. But mostly at the local level, the districts are tracking, who might need those supports. I think that's an important point, though, because those students can be the students that are hardest to track and hardest to find. And so again, coming back to our core message of today is having community members, having food banks, having churches, make sure that they're connecting our students to our local school districts, because those homeless students can get supports at their local districts. So I think the data is always a challenge with that population, but it's something we continue to strive to find and then support those families.
And then I mentioned earlier today that we announced the money that we're pushing out, Adams 14, Sheridan, other school districts for families who are at risk of homelessness to have that additional stability.
Last question from the phone. I'm Mary from Colorado Politics. The flip side of all of this is
Hold, Marianne, we're going to turn you up a little bit, and if you could start your question over. Go ahead.
No problem. Marianne from Colorado Politics, and I wanted to get to the flip side of this whole situation, which is our teachers. And this is for Superintendent Munn and Commissioner Anthes, I think. What are you doing to reassure teachers that they are safe to be in the classrooms? That's number one. Number two, how are you addressing what we're hearing is a growing teacher shortage from teachers who just don't want to take that risk?
Thank you for the question. We have from day one told our teachers that we were going to do everything we can to, one, get the best science and apply the best science. And that's, at the end of the day, all we can do. We're making sure that we are connecting very closely with our health partner, which is Tri-County Health, to lay out, here's the best approach to setting up classrooms, to being in our environments, and to apply that. I think it's incredibly important that we make sure to tell our staff and our families that they will not get health advice from me. They will get it from those who are qualified to do that. We are implementing that advice. We were also in APS, the first district in the state to sign up for COVID Check Colorado, so all of our teaching staff can get free rapid COVID testing twice a month. I know many other districts have done the same. And then we're making sure that we apply the guidance that comes out from CDPHE and others around how we respond to that. So far, you are not seeing across Colorado school districts a spread of the virus within school environments. You're seeing community spread, but you're not seeing it happen within schools. And I think that's due in part to the rapid testing, but also due to the protocols that we're putting in place.
And just to add to that, I think Superintendent Munn is absolutely right. What we're doing is making sure that we are following the best medical advice, the best social distancing, masking guidance, and supporting our school districts in any way. The governor provided K95 masks to all of our teachers and continues to do that. I know our districts are working very hard on health screenings and systems to make sure that our teachers are safe. We know that that is incredibly important, and it's a challenge that we're all facing right now. As for the teacher shortage, it is a challenge, and we continue to try to encourage folks to come into the pipeline, become a teacher. We try to alleviate and have flexible policies to get our teachers into the pipeline, and we're also exploring new ways to expand our substitute teacher pipeline. So those are all in the works, but it absolutely is a challenge during this time.
Thank you all for joining us.